After a black mechanic's unexpected repair for a Hell's Angel, 3 incredible secrets are revealed. Jamal wiped the sweat from his brow as he leaned closer to the motorcycle. The bike, a sleek black beast with gleaming chrome, sat in his shop like an unwanted specter. Its owner, Rex, a rough-around-the-edges Hell's Angel, fidgeted across the floor, eyeing Jamal with an unsettling mixture of arrogance and vulnerability. Jamal's hands trembled slightly as he twisted the wrench, feeling the weight of Rex's reputation hang in the air, thick like gasoline fumes. Just standing near the man made Jamal's instincts flare. Specters of violence etched into the fabric of their community threatened to resurface. Doubt gnawed at him. Could he repair this bike, knowing it belonged to someone like Rex? He had always prided himself on integrity, but was it worth sacrificing his peace of mind for a few bucks? Jamal hesitated, the prospect of earning a quick payday overshadowed by the fear of what he might uncover. And then there was his father's shop, a lifeline bound to a legacy that carried the weight of family expectations. Suddenly, that responsibility felt suffocating. As the afternoon wore on, he maneuvered through the bike's intricate parts, his mind racing. The brute silence in the shop contrasted with his swirling thoughts. The shadows of past hurts loomed large. Rex shot him glances, though Jamal couldn't decipher if they were filled with malice or just raw, unrefined curiosity. Questions bubbled. What was Rex's story? What devils did he carry that intertwined with Jamal's own family history? Before he could acknowledge his growing unease, he stumbled upon something hidden within the bike, a weathered journal tightly wedged in the undercarriage. His breath caught as he examined the pages, each filled with cryptic entries that hinted at secrets. As he turned each page, Jamal felt the ground beneath him pull away. The stories hinted at betrayal and loss that seemed eerily familiar, family situations he had only heard whispers about. What if the truths tied to Rex's past were somehow linked to the pain his family had endured? Internal discord ignited as he confronted his feelings of rage and empathy. I could see it in Rex's eyes, a storm of regret beneath the tough exterior. Should he confront him about it? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now, let's continue. As tension thickened, Jamal's hands trembled slightly, not with fear, but with the weight of crossroads.
He was on the cusp of a confrontation, thirsting for answers but paralyzed by the implications. Just then, the door swung open and his younger sister walked in. Her expression morphed into alarm as she dropped an envelope on the counter, a foreclosure notice for the shop, its contents burning brighter than the bike's chrome finish. In that moment, everything spiraled. His family's security hung in the balance, right alongside unhealed wounds and the secrets he began to unravel. Jamal could feel the air heavy with despair, choking down his determination as Rex watched, the weight of their intertwined fates pressing down like an anvil. Would he choose to fight to save everything he held dear, or entertain the haunting specter of revenge against what Rex may have taken? Every option felt like a betrayal. Jamal's mind raced with the implications of the foreclosure notice. The shop had been his father's, and now it felt like the ghosts of lost dreams were settling in around him. He glanced at Rex, who remained silent, his piercing gaze fixed on Jamal with an intensity that felt unnerving. Was this man a part of the very problem he was staring down, or was there more connecting them than he realized? "Your sister?" Rex finally broke the silence, his voice gravelly yet laced with a hint of curiosity. It was a probe more than a statement. Jamal nodded, his throat tightening at the thought of houses slipping through fingers like sand. "Seems like you have some big decisions to make," Rex added, leaning back in his seat, as if enjoying the spectacle of Jamal's turmoil. The weight of his words pressed down harder than the motorcycle parts arranged haphazardly around the shop. Jamal felt the suffocating realization that he had been caught in a a cycle of fear, failures, and unfinished business. "Why does it matter to you?" Jamal's voice came out sharper than he intended, yet still layered with uncertainty. Rex studied him with an eerie calm, a ghost from the past juxtaposed against the reality of the present. "I know what it means to lose," Rex finally said, his tone softer, almost reflective. Jamal seized the opportunity. "I'm not interested in your pity or your whatever sympathy you think you have." Rex shrugged, seemingly unfazed. "You surrounding yourself with anger won't protect you. It never does. I was once a lot like you, full of fire and empty promises." Jamal's chest tightened. The bitterness he had harbored began to unfurl, revealing something equally potent: curiosity about Rex's life, about the shared threads of their experiences. Yet the juncture was fraught with dangers. Could he allow himself to relate to this man, conjured from the very nightmares his family had tried to escape? "What do you know about losing?" Jamal demanded, though his voice now trembled with the vulnerability he was unwilling to share. Rex leaned forward, surprising Jamal with uncharacteristic intensity. "I know everything about it. This bike, for instance."
"It's my last connection to my brother. After going to prison, he took the brunt of my mistakes. I didn't see it coming, but it cost him everything." The rawness of Rex's words cut through Jamal. The image of lost family wrapped tightly around both their lives, locked eyes, and Jamal found himself searching for humanity in Rex that he had previously dismissed. "What do you expect me to do with this information?" Jamal countered, gripping the wrench as if it could anchor him against the tide of emotions crashing within. "Decide whether to drown or swim," Rex replied flatly, then added, "Understand your soul more than the machinery around you." Jamal's heart thudded in response, processing the sudden weight of this shared pain. He had spent so long focusing on fixing the exterior problems in his life. Could he shift into the uncomfortable space of exploring the interior fractures that propelled him here? "I'm not like you," Jamal asserted, but even as he said it, he questioned the truth in his own words. He had been an unwilling participant in his own life, just as Rex had been thrust into his path. Now the tension swirled anew as time charged forward. He could sense the urgency in Rex's undisguised intent. It was not merely about the bike anymore, nor the money it could bring. This was about confronting the jagged pieces of broken history. As Jamal's mind turned, struggling between resisting Rex's allure and succumbing to the curiosity about the past, something within him began to shift. The stakes were impossibly high. Would he risk stepping into an uncomfortable alliance, or cling to the fear that had governed his life? His thoughts swirled like the smoke of Rex's bike, tangled and elusive. Then, from the depths of his focus, he caught Rex's eyes again, recognizing perhaps for the first time the flicker of shared hope and despair. It mirrored an unsettling challenge. Perhaps it was time he confronted his own demons, rather than allowing them to haunt him from the shadows. The moment crystallized into clarity, plunging him into the unknown. As he prepared to make a decision that could alter the course of his life, a distant roar came from outside, cutting through the tension in the shop. Jamal's heart raced as he grabbed the journal, his head spinning with possibilities and pathways unfolding just outside his grasp. It was time to face the questions head-on. What more lay beneath the surface, both within himself and in Rex's life? And what dark truths would the journal reveal if he decided to heed its call? The shop felt heavier after Rex's confession, as if the walls themselves absorbed the rawness of shared pain. Jamal could still sense the weight on his shoulders, and while he had been living in a cocoon of anger, the flicker of understanding Rex offered now beckoned him to peel away the layers he'd meticulously wrapped himself in. Could he really begin to navigate the deeper waterways of his emotions? With the journal in hand, its leather surface cool and unyielding, he flipped through the worn pages, the faint scent of ink and paper igniting memories, moments in his father's shop that reflected so much more than any machine could offer. He recalled afternoons spent polishing the old Chevy, the laughter exchanged while discovering the intricacies of engines, long since replaced by silence and the clank of tools. Cradling the journal, Jamal felt a ghostly presence urging him to confront what lay buried beneath resentments: love, hope, desperation,
and the unrelenting desire to rise from the ashes of the past. Rex's words echoed in his mind. Understand your soul more than the machinery around you. It was a challenge that stirred something proactive within Jamal. He was not merely a mechanic destined to repeat failures. He felt the intrinsic pull to redefine not just his place in the shop, but in a broader canvas of existence. With determination, he settled down in the grease-stained corner of the shop, ready to uncover the truth buried in the pages. What if he chronicled more than the mechanics of engines? As he began to write, he realized he was tracing the outlines of his life, detailing his own journey through heartache and hope. Each word pulled him closer to the actions he had skirted around, what had become bonds, heated discussions, and missed moments with his sister. Facing those memories unleashed a torrent. Mixed with regret was an alarming clarity. They had taken a back seat in his life, lost in the buzz of tasks and repairs. He couldn't fix her troubles. He couldn't fix the shop alone, nor could he escape the shadows. But could he start by reaching out? Thunder rumbled outside the shop, and flickers of lightning cracked through the dark sky, illuminating the depth of his thoughts. The questions swam in the recesses of his mind. Would he be brave enough to reach out to his sister, offer her a part in the rebuilding of their shared world? Could he genuinely engage with Rex, forging a pathway toward possible redemption for both men? Feeling the electric energy of the approaching storm gather in tandem with his thoughts, Jamal's heart raced, driven by the urgency for bold action. Behind every mechanical failure he faced lay an underlying truth waiting to resurface, a personal journey yet to unfold. Decisions clashed within him, a battle between his fear of vulnerability and the desire for connection, one amplifying the other like the thunder growing louder outside. He had spent too long staring at the garage floor, lost among dust and metal, avoiding the very person he needed to reclaim. Amidst the chaos brewing in and out, he made a choice. Setting the journal aside, he stood, anchoring himself against the workbench. This was more than simply mending a shop. It was about reigniting relationships, confronting ghosts, and confronting the lurking possibility of failure.
If Rex could lose everything, yet claim a signal of hope, perhaps he too could learn to embrace the messiness of life. But as Jamal stepped toward the shop door, an unexpected sound burst through the ominous rumble of the storm, revving engines echoing down the street. His gut clenched instinctively, understanding in that moment that not all encounters would lead to healing. He turned back to Rex, who stood with a challenging stare, and inwardly questioned what awaited him beyond the threshold. The past may haunt him, but perhaps the roaring engines outside heralded not just danger, but the promise of transformation. Would he carry the fear of his father's legacy, or carve out a new path, merging the lessons of the past with the potential of the present? As the storm loomed heavier and the engines echoed closer, the gravity of the moment settled in. The decisions ahead weighed on him, each consequence dangling like the storm clouds overhead. Jamal took a deep breath, resolved to step forward. Where would it lead him? And what awaited him beyond the door? As Jamal stepped outside, the storm enveloped him with a ferocity that mirrored the turmoil in his heart. Rain fell in sheets, soaking through the fabric of his clothes, but he hardly noticed the cold. His focus narrowed on the sounds of revving engines that sliced through the tempest, a visceral reminder of the chaos he was about to confront. The street had transformed into a scene plucked from a nightmare, the gleaming metallic bodies of motorcycles lined up, their polished surfaces reflecting the flashes of lightning. Among them, a figure in a black leather jacket stood with a commanding presence, emanating authority reminiscent of the ghosts he sought to face. It was a Hell's Angel, a stark contrast against the melancholic backdrop of the weather, and for a moment, Jamal felt the weight of uncertainty settled heavily on his shoulders. Had he made a mistake? The question ricocheted within him, but he pushed it aside. He couldn't turn back now. That would only solidify the patterns of avoidance he had spent years cultivating. Instead, he pressed forward, stepping into the chaos with intent. The biker glanced at Jamal with interest, not bothering to mask the scrutiny that followed. Jamal could feel the scrutiny pierce through him, and wondered if this was yet another test of his resolve. Was he truly stepping into a confrontation, or merely escalating the very turmoil he wished to leave behind? The fleeting thought of retreat flickered, but he squashed it. "Need something?" The biker barked, his voice rising above the storm's howl.
Jamal swallowed hard and briefly contemplated his next words. Small talk had never been his strong suit, especially not with people whose lives mirrored the chaos swirling around him. Yet he sensed a plummet of opportunity, a chance to bridge the worlds that seemed so far apart.
Jamal's voice wavered slightly as he responded, "I heard some engines roaring and thought you might need a hand." From the corner of his eye, he noticed Rex lingering in the doorway of the shop, his expression twisted in a mixture of curiosity and concern. Jamal's heart raced as he wrestled with the implications. Was he proving to Rex that he could confront even the most intimidating situation? Or was he gambling with his safety, dancing dangerously close to a decision that could backfire? "Prove it," the biker challenged, crossing his arms. His stance was defensive, as if he was gauging whether Jamal was brave enough to take on their troubles. "I know engines. I can help," Jamal asserted, though he hadn't expected this sort of initiation. The mechanic within him lit up, briefly drowning out the echo of his insecurities. It wasn't just about the machines anymore. It was about belonging, proving he could maneuver through life's complexities as well as he could repair an engine. The biker tilted his head, seemingly weighing Jamal's words against an invisible scale. A subtle nod confirmed that Jamal had climbed over the hurdle. He was in. But even success bore its own burdens. The prospect of engaging with this rough crowd had the potential to unlock deeper facets of his identity, ones he hadn't dared to explore. Rex's presence loomed behind him, a reminder of grounding gravity, someone who saw the raw edges of his vulnerability. Yet Jamal knew this moment hinged not just on his budding relationship with Rex, but on carving out his own space in a world that often resisted the softer touches of humanity. Now the challenge burgeoned. Could he connect with this biker beyond the constraints of reputations and personal histories? The storm raged as the winds howled, but Jamal stood resolute, acutely aware that every corner turned in his life could lead toward a painful reality or a promising future. With the roar of engines and the sharpness of challenges leaning in around him, Jamal understood he was confronting more than just a motorcycle repair. He was rebuilding himself amidst the debris of a turbulent past. The biker stepped closer, curiosity glinting in his eyes, ready to test both Jamal's mechanical skill and his psychological mettle. Jamal clenched his fists, realizing he was standing on the precipice of change. The pivotal moment had arrived, and uncertainty hung thick in the air, blending seamlessly with the scent of rain and oil, a reminder that growth often arose from the most unexpected places. And as he prepared to face the gritty reality of what lay ahead, one nagging thought echoed in his mind. Would he discover not only his strengths in this chaos, but also confront the shadows of fear that had kept him shackled for too long? The roar of engines mingled with the raucous thunder as Jamal stepped closer to the heart of the chaos.
The biker's eyes pierced through the downpour, reflecting not just scrutiny, but a flicker of something almost resembling respect. It was more than he had expected. He had merely ventured into this storm to prove something to himself, but now he felt the weight of expectation pressing in on him from all sides. He couldn't shake the feeling that every second spent on this precipice of uncertainty was both exhilarating and terrifying. The tension was palpable, and as he wiped rain from his brow, Jamal's mind raced with thoughts that spiraled between hope and fear. What lay ahead? Did he have the skills he had claimed? The biker's grizzled face showed no signs of letting up, as if he relished the uncertainty that clawed at Jamal. Taking a deep breath, Jamal felt the mechanic within him awaken. His heart beat loudly as he approached a nearby motorcycle that had sputtered to a stop, steam hissing from its beleaguered engine. He noticed the small imperfections, the leaking oil, the poorly adjusted carburetor. It was a familiar language, one he understood deeply. Yet this time, fixing a bike was not just about oil and gears. It was about repairing the currents within himself. "I can take a look," Jamal stated, confidence rising like the tide behind his initial uncertainty. The biker merely raised an eyebrow, still unconvinced. "Talk is cheap. Let's see what you can do." With the storm raging around him, Jamal knelt beside the motorcycle. As he reached for the tools that lay scattered nearby, the moment transformed. What felt like an avalanche of self-doubt began to melt away. His hands moved with purpose, trained, familiar, and instinctual. Each turn of the wrench was not only a mechanical adjustment, but a silent declaration that he was not the timid boy who had faltered years back. But as he worked, something else began to pierce through the clang of metal and rain. He felt the weight of the biker's stare, the scrutiny that shifted from judgment to curiosity, and perhaps even intrigue. Jamal was acutely aware of the stakes. This wasn't just a fix-it gig. He was negotiating his identity amidst these hardened exteriors. "You know your shit," the biker said,
a begrudging tone of approval creeping into his voice. Jamal glanced up, surprised by the affirmation. In this world, respect was earned in a way that filament threads of the past often tangled. He fought to suppress a growing sense of elation. Could he really be breaking through? As he continued his work, a revelation hit him. He found solace in the mechanics, in the predictable outcomes of each properly tightened screw. It was a comforting, stark contrast to the raw unpredictability that weighed down his soul. The essence of his being was unfolding as he dismantled the separation between who he was and who he longed to be. Finally, after several tense moments that felt like an eternity, he stood back, wiping his hands on his jeans.
The motorcycle roared to life, its engine purring like a contented beast. The biker's eyes widened, a flicker of approval now fully igniting. "Not bad, kid," he said, his voice softer than before. In that moment, Jamal caught a glimpse of what he could achieve. Beyond mechanics, he saw that he could bridge the chasms of judgment and fear. Yet, as he looked around at the diverse swirl of hardened biker faces, he realized that acceptance would not come easily. Challenges were still lurking, waiting for him to stumble as he carved out a place in this new reality he dared to explore. But another thought loomed larger in his mind. What if, beyond this moment of triumph, he had more to learn from these bikers than just technical skills? What hidden narratives and unspoken truths lay waiting to be uncovered, tethered to this chaotic life he stood poised to dive into? The storm continued its relentless downpour, but Jamal sensed a shift within himself. He wasn't just repairing a motorcycle, he was embarking on a journey that could redefine everything he thought he knew about resilience, identity, and belonging. He had passed an initial test, but what awaited him when the engines quieted and the conversation began? The next chapter of his journey beckoned, and he couldn't shake the excitement that pulsed with every thud of thunder. Would he find allies among the chaos, or would he face truths that threatened to unravel him? As the sound of the motorcycle fading into the storm echoed around him, Jamal felt a stirring inside that bordered on unsettling. The transient thrill of mechanical success lingered, but it was overshadowed by a growing realization. He wasn't merely operating tools or rectifying mechanical failures, he was wrestling with deeper discord within himself. The biker, his features now softened by approval, shifted closer. "Name's Rick," he introduced, extending a hand that looked both tough and calloused. Jamal took it, the grip firm, a physical acknowledgement that perhaps he did belong in this chaotic world after all, at least for the moment. "Jamal," he said, forcing confidence into his voice, "nice to meet you." But deep down, he questioned whether this was merely the calm before the inevitable storm of judgment that could blow his way with the next wrong move. Every interaction held the potential for destabilization. "Can you tell me what you did? I mean, how you fixed that?" Rick asked, a flicker of interest bubbling beneath his rough exterior. Jamal's heart raced again, but this time from the prospect of sharing his knowledge rather than insecurity. "There was a leak, and the carburetor was out of tune," Jamal explained, buoyed by the tangible impact of his contributions. "It was just basic stuff." Rick nodded, the initial respect cementing into an unspoken bond that ignited Jamal's curiosity.
Had he unwittingly begun to carve a niche for himself among these hardened individuals, or was this a blip on the radar of his experiences? "Basic," Rick scoffed lightly. "You'd be surprised how many would have called it a hopeless case. You've got sharp skills, kid." The seeds of pride blossomed within, yet alongside it loomed the shadow of self-doubt. Could he trust that this respect wasn't fleeting, that it wasn't a veneer that could easily crack? As Rick shared stories of his past experiences and the various personalities that threaded through this life of bikes and chaos, Jamal felt a deeper connection forming, not just to Rick, but to the entire lifestyle. Yet, freshly planted admiration was also accompanied by an unsettling realization. The bikers, with their grizzled faces and tough exteriors, held more than just mechanical knowledge. They were weaving tales rich with hardship, joy, and survival. Each narrative peeled back layers of their personas, revealing a tapestry of life experiences that both terrified and intrigued him. Could he immerse himself deeper into their world without losing who he truly was? Jamal pondered this dilemma as laughter erupted from nearby bikers, punctuated by the constant rhythm of rain against metal. It was a raucous celebration of survival and camaraderie in the face of all odds. The air was thick with stories, potentials, and risks, and Jamal was left to grapple with a gradual realization. This was a two-way street. Accepting their stories meant he'd have to share his own, bearing his vulnerabilities not just to strangers, but to himself. He felt a swell of commitment to pursue this. In order to earn their respect more permanently,
he would have to confront and share his own past. The fear that had always shadowed his desire to grow beyond a mechanical expert. What if his story shattered the connection he had begun to build? What if it nudged the very walls he fought to dismantle? As the storm began to relent, Jamal knew the moment was drawing near when he would have to open up. Would his truth offer him acceptance, or send him tumbling back into solitude? The prospect loomed large, unanswered, leaving Jamal restless. After all, the engine of his desires roared louder than ever. He could either accelerate toward the truth, or he could stall out and risk losing everything he had begun to reconceptualize about himself. Uncertainty pulsed like thunderclouds overhead, and as laughter turned to whispers amongst the bikers, Jamal felt the moment of reckoning approaching. He could sense it, the gravity of revelation ready to push him anew, because this time, the weight wasn't entirely a burden. It could also be his liberation. Would he be brave enough to embrace it? The rain had eased, leaving an earthy scent in the air, and Jamal found himself enveloped by the warm glow of a nearby campfire. The flames flickered like a heartbeat amongst the rugged gathering.
Bikers were sharing stories louder now, laughter interwoven with the crackling of wood as Jamal sank deeper into contemplation. He felt a shift in his consciousness. The raucousness around him began to blur, morphing into a backdrop for his internal dialogue. For too long he had worn a mask for everyone, blending into roles dictated by the expectations of others. But here, among the bikers and their openness, he sensed a profound invitation to strip away those layers. Yet vulnerability came with its own sting. Daring to expose the raw, unfiltered parts of himself was akin to riding a bike on a treacherous road. At any moment he could veer off course. Rick's story echoed in the recesses of his mind, tales of loss, triumph, and everything monstrous in between that had shaped this rugged group of friends. Jamal felt drawn to contribute a thread to this rich tapestry, to stand before them not just as an observer, but as a participant. As the clamor reached a plateau, a lull descended over the gathering. It was as if the realization was mutual. Everyone needed to acknowledge that their lives were intricately woven together through shared narratives. Rick leaned towards him slightly, the fiery glow illuminating the corner of his eyes, inviting yet probing. "Jamal," he said, voice low but clear, "what's your story? How'd you end up in this wild bunch?" The air between them was electric, and Jamal felt the pressure of anticipation. He could easily retreat into the familiar safety of silence, or for once seize the moment and let the truth spill out. He hesitated, grappling with the instinct to craft a palatable version of himself, one that presented facades of strength, of being the mechanical whiz without any demons lurking beneath. Yet the very essence of this gathering demanded authenticity. They were a community forged through brackets of acceptance, not perfection. "Honestly," Jamal began, sensing his own voice gain momentum with each word, "I've been afraid of being seen as less than. I used to think that if I didn't keep my head down and work on engines, there wouldn't be any of the—" He paused, searching for the right term, "excitement or camaraderie I've seen tonight." His audience remained intent, the embers of their connections glowing brighter as he glanced around. Could this be the moment that anchored him to this new circle? The doubt still hung heavy, but the weight of judgment felt lighter in Rick's unyielding gaze. "Don't hide behind what you think people want to see," Rick offered, solid and reassuring. "Show us your truth, Jamal. You may be surprised at how we respond." The encouragement struck a chord. A small flicker of defiance ignited in him. Wasn't that the very thing he had desired? To be both mechanic and man, capable of holding both grit and vulnerability? He had to shift gears. There was no bowing back. As he continued, Jamal laid bare the struggles of fitting in through years of feeling marginalized. With each word, he unraveled fragments of his past fears, transformed into a semblance of strength. He spoke not just of battles fought within, but also of his resolve to redefine what belonging meant to him. The bikers became a mirror, reflecting his authenticity back, demanding more of him each time. As the tales melded into one another, Jamal felt a sort of catharsis wash over him, a release that blended nostalgia with hope. He could suddenly see their faces shift from curiosity to something akin to understanding, breaking down barriers he hadn't imagined could exist. "Now that's the real deal," Rick affirmed, breaking into a grin. "You've got more than just skills, kid. You've got heart." The atmosphere shifted palpably. Jamal had shifted too. He was no longer just the observer longing for acceptance, but a part of the chaotic symphony of their lives. But as the fire began to die down, leaving embers to dance against the darkening sky, a raw realization cut through him. Now that he'd opened up, would he still be seen as one of them once the story settled? Or was he merely inviting the same judgment he feared most? The undercurrent of uncertainty churned within, charged with a new energy. Answers awaited, but only if Jamal could muster the courage to navigate through the next curveball life would throw his way. What lay ahead remained shrouded in mystery, yet one thing was painfully clear. The price of vulnerability often demands another leap of faith. Would he dare take that next step? The fire dwindled to a soft glow, but within Jamal, the embers of his revelation burned brightly. A rhythmic pulse echoed in the stillness of the night, mirroring his fluctuating thoughts. He was confronted not just with the warmth of acceptance, but also an overwhelming tide of uncertainty. What had he unleashed by sharing his truths? Jamal's surroundings began to blend together, the faces of the bikers now more than just silhouettes. They morphed into a collective challenge. Their acceptance lingered in the air, echoing the complexities of his own identity. Would this camaraderie calm his fears, or would they inevitably spiral into judgment? The primal instincts within him wrestled for control. On one side lay the fear of vulnerability, an old companion who kept him safe in silence, and on the other was an invitation to evolve. Embracing authenticity was intoxicating, yet it demanded he confront layers of insecurity he'd long concealed. He drew in a shaky breath, anchoring himself as he gathered his resolve. Rick clapped Jamal on the back, the force jolting him from his spiral. "We're all flawed, man. It's what makes us real. Just keep riding that wave of honesty. It won't always be easy, but you'll find freedom in it." With the urge to retreat still simmering beneath the surface, Jamal decided he had a duty to himself.
This new path wasn't merely about revealing information. It was an act of self-acceptance, a pivotal turn toward a more profound understanding of who he was. Yet, as he was beginning to piece his narrative together, questions re-emerged like unwelcome shadows. He had shared his vulnerabilities, but what of the technical boundaries that kept him secure? His skills as a mechanic were his crown, a mark of pride. Would revealing his backstory threaten that identity, or fortify it? "What are you working on?" one biker asked, breaking through his daze, a diversion towards his craft. He looked towards the horizon, where the first hints of dawn hinted at fresh possibilities. "Mostly classic bikes," he answered, tension easing from his shoulders as passion seeped into his voice. "I restore old machines, bring them back to life." The group leaned in, intrigued. "A man of many talents, then," Rick said, mischief dancing in his eyes. "Ever thought of building something original, something that would represent more than just horsepower?" That question hung delicately in the air, and beneath it lay an uncharted challenge, a chance to manifest his identity through his craft. Jamal felt the flicker of excitement ignite again, tethered now with a fierce desire to create something real, something that told his story. A spontaneous idea began to form, expanding within him like a fresh surge of adrenaline on an open road. What if his next project was a bike that combined old-world charm with modern elements, each detail a testament to his journey? The plan nestled within him, a whisper of ambition, its contours beginning to sharpen. Stepping back from the fire, Jamal looked to his fellow bikers. "I think I will. I'll build a bike that reflects my journey, my struggles, triumphs, everything." His voice gained strength, clarity breaking through previous uncertainties. The bikers erupted into applause, the sound of their acceptance reverberating through the night. But Jamal realized what this meant. Undertaking this project would require him to maintain the balance of vulnerability and strength that had finally begun to define him. As they toasted to his new endeavor, Jamal sensed the excitement mingled with apprehension, a dark undercurrent pulling at the fringes of his mind. The weight of expectations, both from himself and those around him, began to compound. The ride towards his dream wouldn't be smooth. He knew there would be obstacles, moments of self-doubt creeping back in. Jamal's newfound purpose crystallized into responsibility. Was he prepared to face the judgment wrapped in the scrutiny of his past? Would he succeed where fear threatened to undermine his skills? The night drew onwards, and with it uncertainty lingered. Could he truly create something that authentically encapsulated his experience? And so, with dawn not far off, so too were the challenges that loomed ahead.
Would he dig deep enough to confront not just the ghosts of his past, but also the new expectations that came with creation? The next ride was set to shake the ground beneath him, and as uncertainty intertwined with ambitious plans, Jamal felt the pull to dig into the grit that awaited. What would emerge from this venture remained a tantalizing enigma. The first light of dawn painted the horizon in soft hues of orange and violet, a stark contrast to the chaos brewing within Jamal. He sat in the garage, tools scattered around like the pieces of his mind, each one a fragment of his aspirations and fears. The project that lay ahead had become both a beacon of hope and a source of trepidation. As he surveyed the gathered parts, an old frame stood out. It was rusty, but had character echoing through its curves. How much of his own story could he shape into this machine? Questions about his skill set danced around, teasing and taunting at every turn. Each piece he touched felt both familiar and foreign, much like the emotions churning inside him. Could he harness this blend of vulnerability and artistry to create something that resonated deeply, both for himself and those who would experience it? With each bolt he tightened, Jamal's mind raced, not just with mechanical calculations, but with the weight of human experience he was attempting to encapsulate. Memories flooded back, his father's calls for him to stay focused, his mother's worry when he took to the streets with little more than a bike and a dream. No, this bike could not be simply a machine. It needed to ignite a conversation, draw others into the light he was attempting to forge from shadows. The weight of his thoughts grew heavier as the sun climbed higher. The reflection of the metal glinted, a reminder of all his past failures. What if the bike didn't turn out right? What if the guys he'd shared with judged him? He had put himself out there in a way that left him exposed, raw. It had been exhilarating in the moment, but the reality was carving deeper grooves of anxiety. Risking exposure was one thing. Risking failure in front of those people, by those standards, was another. His thoughts spiraled. He had spent years being regarded as solid mechanic, respected yet distant. What would this reveal about him? Could crafting this bike lead to a deeper connection with others? Or would it overshoot, exposing a vulnerability others might exploit? The risks felt equivalent to those he faced on the road. No helmet, no map, just sheer instinct. Determined to lead himself down a path of understanding rather than retreat, Jamal reached for the parts again. Inspiration struck him, a meticulous approach inspired by the old motorcycles he loved. Every flaw he highlighted in the restoration would reflect his journey. This bike would not only carry the marks of grit, it would tell a story of repair, much like his own life had been pieced together one moment at a time. But what was this story?
He needed to distill his pain into inspiration and his creativity. He was building it, but it was more than just a bike. It was an extension of himself. Every detail had to speak truthfully. Joys masked by paint, tears hidden in the rust. He could think of it as an art form, not merely functional, but emblematic of his growth. Contributions of his past would drive him forward. As the framework began to take shape, a voice from behind pulled him from his thoughts. "You seem deep in that metal." It was Rick, his eyes glinting with curiosity and support. "The therapy is in the process, right?" Jamal nodded slowly, the dial of acceptance turning. "It's more of a journey. Each piece reflects a part of me. I'm trying to bring them together, but it feels monumental." Rick stepped closer, his interest palpable. "It will be, but don't shy away from sharing that process. If it's authentic, it won't just be a bike, it will be a statement." His words echoed in Jamal's mind, igniting a fire that threatened to obliterate his hesitations. Nothing worth crafting would come easy, but the emotional connections formed in pursuit of authenticity brought a sense of lightness, an awareness of the potential for transformation. He was not merely constructing a machine, he was building a vessel for all the bruised pieces of his character. As afternoon slanted through the shop, illuminating the scattered tools, anticipation took hold of Jamal once more. The fear was still there, lurking, but so was an exhilarating sense of purpose. He had a story to share, one worthy of admiration and respect. Jamal lifted his gaze toward the open door, where the world waited beyond the threshold, ready to greet his endeavor. Grit and grace converged within him, and he was driven to harness that fusion into something extraordinary. But with the momentum surging through him, an unsettling realization emerged. What if in the pursuit of forging his story into the bike, he also unveiled truths about himself that he wasn't ready to confront? What awaited him was neither just the open road, nor merely the crafting of a motorcycle. It was the journey into his very own soul, a trip that could change everything he thought he knew about himself. As his fingers tightened on the wrenches, Jamal couldn't shake the feeling of being on the brink.
What would emerge from this crucible of creation would resonate deeper than he could imagine. Would he be ready for the revelations that lay ahead? Weeks passed in a blur, the rhythm of hammers and wrenches dancing through the air as Jamal hunkered down in his father's shop, heart pounding with each calculated adjustment. The motorcycle, his metamorphosis in metal, rose from rubble to something majestic. The old frame had been transformed into a powerful yet elegant bike, a testament not only to his mechanical prowess, but also to his newfound understanding of his identity. With each detail polished, Jamal learned to embrace the art of creation.
No longer just a mechanic confined by expectations, he found a voice among the clanging metal and oily rags, one that harnessed the stories his life had woven into the very fabric of steel. The bike became a mirror, reflecting his journey, the imperfections blending harmoniously with new, each chord resonating with his personal narrative of struggle, acceptance, and triumph. The anticipation building within him was both exhilarating and terrifying. This project had blossomed from mere mechanics into an exploration of his essence, the core of who he was. He often thought back to that night by the campfire, Rick's encouragement ringing in his ears, urging him not to shy away from sharing the process and letting his vulnerabilities transform into a badge of honor. As the sun dipped on the horizon, painting the workspace with golden hues, Jamal prepped for the unveiling of his creation. Inviting Rex and the bikers for the reveal felt natural now, a call to solidify his connections through shared stories rather than fears. The weight of judgment had shifted, acceptance wrapped around him like a comforting embrace. When the day arrived, Jamal stood beside the polished motorcycle, each curve and line gleaming under the soft glow of the shop lights. The ground beneath his feet felt solid, a stark shift from the uncertain trembling that had plagued him not too long ago. He took a deep breath, heart racing, the gravity of the moment hanging thick in the air. The roar of laughter and thudding boots echoed as Rex and fellow bikers entered, their presence a palpable wave of energy. Jamal's chest tightened with anticipation, but a calmness enveloped him. The culmination of weeks of transformation surged within. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice steady and unwavering, "this isn't just a bike. It's a testament to resilience, to the struggles we share, and the strength I've gained from this community." As he unveiled the motorcycle, silence enveloped the room. Reverence echoed as the bikers took in the manifestation of Jamal's soul. The shapes embodied everything he had chiseled away. The imperfections sculpted into beauty laid bare his journey towards self-acceptance. Fitted with old-world charm and new power, Jamal continued, the words flowing from him like oil. "It reflects not just where I've been, but how far I've come. This is not just a machine, it's a piece of my story." Applause erupted, a wave of approval crashing over him, igniting a warm sense of belonging. On that day, each clap rang not as a judgment, but an acknowledgement of his brave leap into vulnerability. Rex stepped forward, patting Jamal on the back, pride glistening in his eyes. "You've made something beautiful," he said, the gruff edge softened by sincerity. Jamal felt his chest swell with pride. This was his triumph. It wasn't just the bike that had come to life, it was himself. "Thank you, Rex."
The words held weight as he realized he was no longer seeking validation from anyone. He had carved his space within the chaos. The night unfolded with laughter, stories shared over engines roaring and tires spinning, each anecdote stitched deeper into the community woven around him. This acceptance and newfound connection constantly reminded him of the importance of not just repairing motorcycles, but also mending the frayed pieces of himself. In the days following, Jamal initiated a project structured around building a bike with mates, a collaborative venture that transcended the mechanics, guiding conversations toward life, struggle, and achievement. It wasn't just about the chalk and grease, but about inspiration, community, and redefining their roles as men who fought through past mistakes. The metamorphosis was not just visible in the bike, but palpable in Jamal's newfound confidence and compassion. With every ride he took, the roar of the engine resonated with the courage he had uncovered. Every rev echoed hope into the streets where he once felt confined and trapped. He had emerged as a man comfortable in his skin, a mechanic of life who could manipulate both metal and memories alike. As he rode through the winding roads, the wind whipping through his hair, Jamal felt an unshakable certainty. He had achieved grounding, balance, and connection. This journey was far from over,
and as exciting new chapters awaited, Jamal understood that his revival wasn't merely a culmination of moments. It was a living, breathing testament of triumph resounding through the union of chaos and joy. And at that instant, he realized the world awaited his ventures, urging him to keep exploring the fluidity of life with the same zeal he channeled into every bolt and screw. No longer in search of acceptance, he had solidified his standing in the mechanics of both machine and man. In the end, Jamal achieved the most profound transformation of all. He became his own story, an unwavering testament to the resilience that resided within all who dared to build from their own hearts. So remember, don't wait even one more second. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and support these incredible journeys. Comment below your reactions and theories about this conclusion, and share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative journey. You need to show your support, because only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of these actions.